Sunday. Going to take a look at the top three defensive linemen considered to be the top three defensive linemen / edge rushers by most Daniel Jeremiah types, and I agree with them. Will Anderson out of Alabama, Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. Tyree Wilson, who I will probably refer to as Tyreek Hill at least 4 times today, just like I did when I was typing up the description for this. And Jalen Carter, who comes with a big old pile of complications, and some of which I hadn't really checked in on. There's complications with Jalen Carter. I feel like a lot of people maybe who had the knee-jerk reaction when Todd McShay said that there might be character concerns or maturity concerns with Jalen Carter. Could they at least dial it back a little bit and say, all right, McShay might not have been throwing that out there casually, but we're going to roll through these in like kind of a relaxed fashion. Hopefully I'll chop this up later and turn it into something that's a little bit more consumable for tidbits before the draft. But Will Anderson as the top guy, I think that there is some merit to people that would have Tyree Hill ahead of Will Anderson. And a lot of it, honestly, is just based on what type of defense you want him to be in. Because it's, I don't want to say 6 of one, half dozen of the other, but there's Tyree Wilson does some things really, really well that I don't think, damn it, let me get this up here, that I don't think, here we go. Okay, so Will Anderson, if we were just to read this by Danny Kelly, this is in The Ringer, who has a really good draft guide. If you just want something that's easily consumed, The Ringer does a good job with it. So a well-built, tapered frame with a powerful base and long arms. Former first 5-star prospect out of Hampton, Georgia. He ranked as the #1 weak side defensive end in the country. If you just look at the very top here, elite athleticism, pass rush talent, and infinite upside. I don't know about the infinite upside part, and we're going to see some parts where some parts of his game where his lack of premier ideal pass rusher size can hurt him. He's gonna have to make up for it by being a missile or a Von Miller type. And I think that's where some people have tried to make a Von Miller comparison. I don't see that, and that's not an insult. It's just that Von Miller is an all-time great pass rusher. But if we just watch some of these highlights, the first highlight that Just Bombs Productions here put out, they do a really good job. But this is basically a quarterback being afraid to do the work himself and just letting his running back die at the hands of Will Anderson. But he has that elite closing speed. One thing I've noticed with guys like Will Anderson, we saw this with Jadeveon Clowney back in the day. A lot of times there's a tendency to, I guess, not necessarily be as impressed by their highlights just because they get into the backfield so easy that when they're unblocked, there are plays where other players would be unblocked by design and not get to the play, but these guys get there because they close so quickly. This is what you ideally get out of him, is a speed rusher round the edge. He didn't even really have to use his hands all that violently there. It's really bad by the offensive tackle, but also Will Anderson with that first step being way faster than a guy anticipates. Here he is at the top of the screen versus Texas. Unblocked, closing speed. The one thing I might pick out on here is, let's see if he actually checks the quarterback. Like right there, does he genuinely know? You know what? It's okay because he's got somebody, he's got 43 up there who's probably responsible for the quarterback. So he can just chase, and unblock, make that play. Bottom of the screen here. There you see he's got power above and beyond the 6'4", 250 pounds that he is. And up here, you see he's getting that speed. Guy gets out over his feet and he comes back with a good sense of timing. That's really good leverage right there. That's elite leverage. And if you got a guy that's undersized, he's got to be able to do that. Will Anderson does a really good job with stuff like that. Now, granted, that's against an undersized offensive tackle. We'll see a little bit later when we'll see how he does going up versus some of the hosses, like the kid from Tennessee. Just elite athleticism. I think that some of his 40 time type stuff isn't as impressive as he actually is athletically on the field. And there's not a lot to dislike about this kid. This is another one sorting out everything in the backfield. Like, okay, put yourself in the defensive end's shoes here. This is where one thing I'm very impressed with younger players who, compared to back in our day, they have to deal with so much more misdirection and action in the backfield. But he just is using all his keys there to sort everything out. He's responsible for the quarterback, uses the right leverage to force him back inside. This is okay, and this is what you want to see more of that sometimes he doesn't do, is he's setting an offensive tackle up with his speed upfield. He starts doing this little kung fu stuff beforehand. Like, frankly, that doesn't necessarily do a whole lot to good offensive tackles. But he gets him to stab and gets that hand down immediately. And the nice thing to see there, too, is that his hands and his feet are tied together. Like with edge rushers, you want to see guys who can dance. They want to be able to move their upper body and lower body together in concert. Little shot of him in coverage. It's not going to be his forte, although I think he might be a 3-4 outside linebacker, obviously. This versus the run is, again, because he has such good leverage, he's deceptively strong versus the run at times. Splits two guys there and makes a nice play. He's at the top here. Will Anderson, for those of you just joining us, he's just standing there, taking his time. It's a bad job editing by Seth Payne, who is working on this morning. And apparently, just press the play button, Seth. There you go. Oh, the blitz. Okay, unblocked. By the way, good job by Alabama here. Just a little subtlety here. College kids don't always do a great job of this. Watch the blitzer coming off the edge. Like, he timed it perfectly. So that leaves Will Anderson, who's kind of slow playing his reads, playing his keys, not just hell-bent for leather selfishly or anything. And it ends up just being a busted play. So, sorry, Texas. Frankly, I think this is a year where not everybody is – there aren't guys that are ethereal talents at the top. And the comparison to Von Miller – in terms of what you would like him to be, sure, he's just not that guy. So Will Anderson is definitively one of the top 2 pass rushers, but I don't think that you should draft him expecting him to, man, if he's not a perennial all-pro, it's a disappointment. I think people just really like that he's got a high floor, plays his butt off. He's not, he's going to get every bit out of his physical abilities and talents. It's just a matter of, can he actually anchor in versus some of the heavier guys? This was, and tell me in the comments if this doesn't play, because I'm having an issue with my headphones, which are non-existent right now. But tell me if you can hear Lewis talking about Will Anderson here.
Scouting to me is always about context. So when I watch him against Tennessee, for instance, right, I want to see him going up against Darnell Wright, who is an absolute monster. Darnell Wright is a monster. He's an eraser. He will take people's hearts away in football games. Will struggled with this guy because he didn't have a pass rush package. He didn't have a counter to go with it. He just kept trying to run down the middle on him, and Darnell Wright is like, are you kidding me? You're not going anywhere. I'm just going to lock you down. I'm 6'6", 330 pounds, and I have 35-inch arms. So you're going to have to come with something other than just effort, motor, bull rush. You better be able to counter. You better have a great get-off, and you better just be able to develop.
Okay, so that's the interesting part when he says you better be able to come with something better than just effort and bull rush and all that. Because, I mean, not everybody has effort, and not everybody has a good bull rush who's that size, that speed to power. He does do that really well, but you saw some of those guys he was beating up on earlier. Those looked like 270-pound offensive tackles. Those didn't look like big old Darnell, who looks like, and I'm going to show you some later on just to show you what Will Anderson is up against. It looks like the Death Star. Like when you first see the Death Star, I would imagine, in your X-Wing fighter, and you're trying to figure out how the hell am I going to defeat that X-Star. You try a lot of stuff that doesn't work, and you get exploded as you hit the invisible force field. However it works, you guys can correct me on that later. Don't do it now. I'm not going to be ashamed of not knowing what was that? Episode 4. So There is that. I think, though, the part of having the motor and having the drive and the desire, somebody had asked, is he only all about the pass rush? No, he very much, and I think you're going to see that out of all three of these guys we're going to talk about today. Like, he plays the right way. He's an Alabama kid. He plays his responsibilities. There are times where I've seen people criticize him at times for not getting off the ball quickly, when usually it's actually because he's got a run read first. So I don't worry about that. I think it's just a matter of, can he develop all those things? And he has shown spurts of it. It's just that sometimes versus the bigger guys, he hasn't done it. This is him talking about who he emulates from the NFL.
I would say the three players I really study a lot would be Khalil Mack, Von Miller, and Nick Bosa, because they all really do a really good job of going speed to power. And when speed to power is not there, they do have a really good moves of the counter moves of working off the speed to power. And that's kind of like, in my game, I'm very speed to power, and I just got to work off of getting the speed to power.
Yeah, and that's the tricky thing when you think about speed to power. Like, okay, it in college, if you're going against a 270-pound offensive tackle and your speed to power, your bull rush stalls, there's things you can do to get off of it. If you're with one of the bigger guys, you just get enveloped, and it's really, really hard to get off of those guys. So that's the part I'm skeptical of. And I think that's, again, where he needs to be in the right scheme. I don't think he's going to be a 4-3 defensive end. I don't think that this is necessarily the guy D'Amico would want. He might respect his game and everything and like him. It's just, it has to be the right scheme. If you just look at his spider chart here from Mock Draftables, I think it tells a pretty good story. I mean, nothing extraordinary or remarkable as an edge defender. And yet he shows up on film as more impressive than that athletically. I don't think that tells the whole story, but it does kind of show that he's not Von Miller. Oh, let me throw this in just about his tattoos, because he has I can't remember what it is. He's got a couple of tattoos. I find this interesting because I'm 48 years old. I have yet to get a tattoo because I want it to mean something, and I just can't. I'm putting too much importance on it. But he's actually talked to his parents about it. His parents sound helpful.
Honestly, at first I seen the tattoo. Somebody had it right here, but I was like, I'm gonna get it on my legs. And I feel like if I'm gonna get a tattoo, me and my mom and dad, we always talk. It was like, if you get a tattoo, make it mean something meaningful. Just don't be going out here getting anything. And I wanted to get something that was meaningful. Like, I got something right here. It says Rare Soul. Here, Fearless.
What's it say there?
It says Rare Soul. Rare Soul. So, like, I'm rare, you know what I'm saying? Like, something meaningful. So, when I got Fearless, it was like, use it. Use it like that's who you are. You're fearless. You don't let nothing fear you. You go out there and you go do your thing. So that's kind of why I got these.
Okay, so the fearless part, and that's where I think this is where we'll come in with this part of it, because if you look at the top offensive tackles in the draft, Paris Johnson is going to be one of them. I think that, and he is a big, strong dude. We saw the kid out of Iowa struggle with him because I just don't think he was ready for his size, and he got kind of enveloped by him. Broderick Jones is a more athletic guy, not quite as big. It's unfortunate because I actually like some of these offensive tackles, but I don't think the Texans should be looking for offensive tackle right now when there's other guys available. What's the kid from? Somebody's asking me about Miles Murphy, and we'll get to him a little bit later. But here he is going versus Darnell Wright, who's the kid out of Tennessee, and that fearless tattoo. I feel like that needs to be a cue for him, because he looks. I don't want to say he looks scared. He looks a little bit intimidated on going against Darnell Wright here and his size, and you're going to see that. Some of it leads to a whole lot of chopping his feet and chicanery before he makes contact, instead of sometimes just going to try to attack Andre the Giant. See, like there, that was a little bit of, he did a little bit of a wax on, wax off for absolutely no good reason. And this is something that happens, like when you watch this versus, okay, see him, he's moving his hands around for no good reason. And Darnell Wright is just kind of watching, saying like, all right, little fella, I'm not going to bite on your upfield. I can see you starting to come back towards me. And, Will Anderson actually has the better hands here and delivers a good jolt. But Darnell Wright is just so strong and powerful that he absorbs him. From a 2-point stance, he gets right into him this time. And this is a wasted spin back. That's just not going to do anything. It helps him get back downfield, but like Darnell Wright is not buying on a lot of the pantomiming that lesser guys are going to. Already right off the bat here, you see a lot of wasted motion. Let's see how this one turns out. Yeah, a whole lot of shaking and then into a power run. It's just that's not going to do anything. Not in the NFL. Good speed there. Okay, so there he trusted his speed. And yes, he went speed to power, but he worked an edge. So with these huge guys, you got to figure out a way to make them weak. And the way you make a huge guy weak is to get on an edge. You use leverage to your advantage. So yes, he's punching him, but he's attacking that outside shoulder, and it gets Wright moving just enough that he can come back to him. Okay, here, like he kind of hops. I think he reads draw there. Okay, I'll give him a break on that one. I think he read draw, which is okay. That was him being responsible and caring about the run, so that's good. Kind of just swallowed up again. I cut a bunch of these out where they have him. He's on the outside here, actually, not the guy who was highlighted. Again, he's on the outside here. There's that same spin back. These guys, I've never seen, man, I hate watching the college guys sometimes because their use of the spin move is so random and arbitrary. And like 2/3 of the time, it's a waste. The spin move is very effective when used properly. It's like, there we go. See, again, he attacked that edge. They lined him up at Alabama, head up on offensive tackles, 4-eye techniques at times. And here's a good example of him coming up, I believe, of him being very, like, playing his role really well. If this is the one I'm thinking of. Nope, this is just a rush. So he gets upfield. He's attacking. Oh, he gets that arm. See, and again, he's attacking an edge. He's using his speed. It got later in the game, and he trusted and realized, okay, I'm not gonna bully this guy around, so I got to get to an edge. And also, the one break I might cut him to is because of Tennessee's offense and that air raid style. There's some things that maybe he was trying to take as direct line as possible to get to Hooker as fast as possible or get to the quarterback as fast as possible. But right here, he does a really good job of getting that hand up. The ball comes out quickly, so that's not on him. But making the quarterback uncomfortable. We just need to see more of that. And I really like I think the kid's made out of all the right kind of stuff. He just needs, I think, probably like we're going to see with Tyree Wilson. Tyree Wilson benefited from some really good coaching. All right, here's one too. If you want to talk about just being selfless and doing what you're supposed to do as a defender, like right here, it's going to be an ET stunt. So he's going to start first. He's going to come inside, and he starts upfield to get the offensive tackle moving out, and then he's just supposed to kamikaze down into that guard's kidneys and blow stuff up. He also, I didn't realize this the first time. He holds Darnell Wright, the tackle, a little bit, which is really great work if you can get it and not get flagged, which clears things up for number 47. So that's good coaching right there. And good job, Nick Saban. You might have a future in this business, coaching defense. So there's, as Wild Thing says, so he's an undersized pass rusher. Yeah, but not ridiculously undersized. He's not like a 235-pounder or something. He probably succeeds on a defense with a lot of other dominant players around him. That's the question. Okay, like how much of an actual difference maker is he? And is he going to make the other guys around him better? He's, let's see, Lover Roget. Maybe in this case, it was more of him lacking a plan to execute. It seems like he's second-guessing his approach here. Yes. This is something that young guys do a lot. They don't commit to their first move, and sometimes it's they have a bit too much of a plan. Sometimes guys plan on their counter right off. And what you can never do with a counter, really, ideally, is don't commit to the counter until it's time to hit the counter. Because what you'll see, and this is what I was talking about with the spin moves, guys they'll plan in their head, okay, I'm going to spin this guy to the inside. So they'll go and they'll start setting the offensive tackle up, but the offensive tackle isn't biting, and you actually could beat him with the speed rush, but because in your head you're thinking, okay, I'm going to spin back, you just spin right back into a waiting guy. It's like trying to juke a fence post. Like the good patient offensive linemen are still sitting there. So I remember Joel Smingy told me that my rookie year. Obviously, I wasn't gonna become a great pass rusher. It wasn't in my DNA. But this is one of the things I've learned just by watching guys that know what they're doing. Yeah, they have a plan, but they let their first move, they give their first move a chance. And then when it's time to hit the hump or to spin back or to club back across, that's when they do it. And I don't think until the second half you didn't really see him start to get that. So it's all he's gonna be fine. I think it's it's a whole lot of nitpicking this time of year. So if we go to our second guy, Tyree Wilson, who, as it says right here, Daniel Jeremiah in the 2023 mock draft, Tyree Wilson went before Will Anderson Jr. Lions took a quarterback. I can't even remember. What was that? That was in mock draft 2.0. Danny Kelly would say infinite upside, relentless motor, bulldozer power, pass rush talent. I mean, this guy is the prototype. He's 6'6", 275. You can see here that Danny Kelly says he's got shades of Jadeveon Clowney. I think that's fair because the knock on him is that he's a little bit stiff, just like Jadeveon Clowney was. I don't think he's as stiff as Clowney. And if we just roll through his highlights first, because that's the fun thing to do this time of year, is roll through highlights. He started off at A&M, by the way, transferred to Texas Tech. And there, again, you see a lot of these guys, the physical freaks, feasting versus the lesser offensive tackles. Right there, that was actually poor hand placement, but he knew where. And one thing you're going to notice about him is he understands where he fits in a defense. And even right here, he took on that kick out block properly, and turned it back in, but then threw himself back inside. He's got, I don't want to say an advanced level of understanding, but a better understanding of where he fits in a defense compared to a lot of physical freaks. Like, there's a guy he's actually worked on understanding the scheme. He's worked on his technique. He's progressively gotten better. I think that he was a late bloomer or a late riser, more because people weren't ready for him to necessarily produce and look the way he did on the field, as much as not a combine guy. I mean, he's just abusing a tight end there. Again, keeping his outside leverage while driving an offensive tackle back in to make the tackle. He's got a really good motor. It's one thing, I don't know if you guys have noticed this. It feels like there are fewer guys with bad motors anymore. And I will credit social media for that, because I think that it used to be one thing when a coach would be yelling at you, but largely in privacy, and then the broadcast would blow you up on Saturday and talk about what a dominator you were, even though you might be lazy. Where now, social media and film scrutinizing on the internet will not let anybody escape all of that. So that it used to be a surprise. A guy would get surprised when all of a sudden it came draft time and people are saying this guy doesn't have a motor. I feel like these guys now, from the time they're juniors in high school, are having their motor scrutinized. So it's rare. It's the exception, not the rule, when you see somebody with a bad motor. I would say Tyree Wilson, I think, though, even by modern, better standards, has a very good motor. You can see right there, his hands kind of died even though he was winning. But, I mean, a really quick arm over there. It was versus the run. You need to see more of that, the quick arm over. He doesn't really quite have that grooved into him yet, the way you want guys to later on. That was from... Okay, so here's another little bit of a highlight. We'll work through oh my goodness. Okay, so he's kind of like Jadeveon Clowney in that he's so freaking big and long that he just kind of appears and can Euro step his way into the backfield. So at times you can't quite appreciate how athletic he is. Here's some more. Right there, we would actually grade that. This is what he's going to find in the NFL. It's going to be annoying to him. Because again, I think this kid has a good motor, but you get graded down if there's a change of speed. So he's going to have a nice hustle play here where, okay, ball's away. He's going to get running, but watch him accelerate when he sees that change of speed. Even if you make a play downfield, that'll get you a loaf by some coaches. 2-point stance. I don't see him as a 3-4 outside linebacker. I see him doing stuff like that. Just a man amongst boys at times. And I think we have... Later on, I've got the full game of him versus North Carolina State. which is a good one to watch because the North Carolina, you went speed, came back at the level of quarterback. I think that's one thing the guys have gotten better at too, like coming back instead of running past the quarterback, stopping, coming under short. Remember the Texans actually back when they were really good on defense in 2011, 2012. That was one thing that drove me crazy. Some of the edge pass rushers would still just allow themselves to get washed past the quarterback. And then you lose contain. You take yourself out of the rush. I think these first two guys we've seen have a good understanding not to do that. And then Tyree Wilson has the ability to get those long arms in there. And I'm glad, since we're going to point some of these out, I want to be sure Lovero gets his credit, because I think I actually have the same criticism from somebody in here. The first thing you'll notice is he's last off the line at times, lacks a bit of explosion. I wonder with that, sometimes the guys who are actually really conscientious and want to be two-way players, want to play versus the run, want to play versus the pass, sometimes it's that they are playing read and react. And that's often a matter of just getting to know and understand when it's okay to just unleash. And so it's not always a bad thing. Third and long, I did notice that. I did notice this, that it's there were times where I couldn't make an excuse for Tyree Wilson, where it does look like he's slow off the ball. Sometimes it's a matter of just keying the ball instead of the guy in front of you. There's some very little basic things like that the coaches, this is the kind of stuff you want to see in pro days. This is the kind of stuff you get when you watch practice, or guys that are at the Senior Bowl. The defensive line coach is going to look at that stuff and think, all right, well, we can definitely, that's an easy fix. Sometimes people will act like all the fixes are easy fixes, and they're not. Like, some guys just never get good at using their hands and punching explosively with their hands, even though they should be able to do it. But keying the ball and things like that, you can work on that. One of the criticisms was his frame is tall and slightly high-hipped, which leads him to come into blocks too tall, limiting his ability to drive forward with maximum efficiency. I think any guy that's 6'6", you see this criticism of him. We're going to see it with Jalen Carter later, and he's not even that tall. But guys get away with playing taller, and that's one of those projections that you got to make that you're never quite sure of. Like, okay, can this guy actually play a lower pad level? Doesn't consistently stack counters off extension. He can be heavily reliant on two-hand extensions and isn't always quick when his rushes stall out. I agree with that. I think he's got to keep his hands more active. That's another thing that he looks like he's got the requisite gumption to do that. Sometimes experiences a delay when he needs to change directions, isn't always able to halt his momentum or control his mass, and doesn't bring elite lateral mobility. I'm not as worried about that. I think he's he's not quite as stiff as Clowney, but Clowney was trying to play 3-4 outside linebacker, which was a mismatch in a lot of ways. And that's why they very rarely had him drop into coverage. I don't think that Tyree Wilson is going to be dropping into coverage all that much. Wilson can't sustain acceleration while pinching tight angles, as his tall frame can be hard to shrink. I'll accept that. So this is okay. This is good. I watched this one time through really quickly. I hate the North Carolina State offensive line because they were coached really well in this game. And as I'm trying to put myself in Tyree Wilson's shoes, I could see that they were coming after Tyree, like they were shoving him down after the play. They had an axe to grind, and they were going to be scrappy. So if I were an NC State fan, I would love that offensive line. But as a defensive lineman, I'm trying to put myself in Tyree Wilson's shoes and talking myself out of getting like so worked up and pissed off that I get either out of position or penalized or something like that. So let's see. He got too far upfield on this one, I think. Oh, no. Okay. He's got a kick out block coming to him. He keeps his outside shoulder free, but that guy, that offensive tackle, is able to wheel on him. So he's got to take that block on more head up. He's done it the right way before, so I'm not as worried about it. There, I could see what you're saying. It's 1st and 10, a little late off the ball, but he's lined up in a 4-eye. And it leads you to wonder whether he's playing run first or not. Nice little kid. See, this got chippy. Did you see that at the very end? Watch the chippiness here. I want to go back and watch this whole game. Watch the running back. I like these NC State guys, even though I hate their offensive line. Look at him. Kicked him. All right, there we go. Tyree Wilson down underneath in a 4-eye, like playing with his hands, stout versus the run. Up top, 2-point stance, rushing. They double team him with a chip block. He's going to get a lot of that. At times he looks unaware of it. He's got to get better at that. Up top, active with his hands, bends it around, gets in on the play. Man, gets taken out by his own guy. 4-eye again, like they line him up inside quite a bit. I don't think, well, he could be a 3-4 defensive end. I mean, that doesn't, and he loses some ground there because he played too high, I think. He had a good down going, then kind of got caught up in the wash. He's got just really long arms as well as legs. That's the part where some of the plays he makes in the backfield are as much to do with his body length than anything else. 2-point stance. Again, I don't need to see him in a 2-point stance all that much at all. I don't want to see him as a 3-4 outside. I'd like to see him on the Texans if he falls. And this play in every snap. This is every snap of the NC State game, so there's going to be some boringness in here at times, which is important to see because you don't see see right there. Okay, there. It's not a great down for him. I want to see if he starts off with inside leverage on that play, but he's playing run first, and no, he's a 5. He comes down to the 3 technique. So he gets reached, kind of double reached, really. So that that offensive tackle is free to a backer, but he makes up for it with a combination of hustle and just being absurdly long. So you don't want to make a living out of that, but he shows an awareness of what he's supposed to be doing. Like it's actually like you'd be surprised how many guys don't know when they're screwing up, which is a coach killer because you spend all your time trying to explain to a guy like, hey, this is how you're screwing up. I need you to do this differently. The guy just kind of looks at you like this. You don't have to worry about that with Tyree Wilson. Okay, this is the one we already saw earlier, but did you see that like violently getting that dude's hands off of him and then splitting the guard and the tackle and then one arm and the quarterback down? Okay, here we go. All right, so he starts to the outside. Man, he does look slender there, doesn't he? I don't know if that's good or bad. So he starts off upfield, posts up with the inside arm, does a quick arm over, lets the guard get into his chest, but he's so strong and he gets his feet. That's a really nice play. And then one arms the dude down. Man, that's that quick arm over we saw earlier. Watching Tyree Wilson. Oh, you know what, everybody? Let me do this real quick. Apologies to anybody that just joined us. We got to do this this banner here for you. Pathetic Seth Payne. There we go. Now you know we're talking about Tyree Wilson. If you're under the impression that Will Anderson was 6'6", 275, I apologize. He certainly is not. Okay, 2-point stance up at the top. There again, you see he's getting kicked out. This is the one we already watched. And these guys are coming at him, and he does a really nice job this time of, you understand, like he's supposed to turn this play back inside first and foremost and keep his outside shoulder free. And it's really hard to do because sometimes this guy will actually, at the last moment, wheel and it'll turn into a reach block, but he does a good job. He's a little high there, like an NFL player is going to route him out there, but he comes back inside and he gets in on the play. So he turns it back in and makes the play. It's not so easy to do, like when it's coming at you there. He's just too big and physical. Flag for. Again, there, keeping his leverage. I really like, he's got a sense for football inside. Okay, you could say he's laid off the ball there. This is it's just so annoying. Let me tell you, as a formerly conscientious, I used to be a conscientious person and football player, and I'm not either of those things anymore. 1, because I'm physically incapable, and 2, because I've just gotten grumpier. So watch where he's lined up. All right, so he's a 5 technique, 4-eye, whatever, on the offensive tackle. And he's going to be he's laid off the ball compared to those other guys. When he gets into read and react, like in first down mode, and it's 2nd and 12, he's got to learn to let it loose a little bit. He's too conscientious for his own good, which is a very good thing to be. Like, that's where I think a lot of teams that run 3-4s are going to look at this and say, you know what, this guy, like, it wouldn't be banging my head against the wall to teach this guy how to play 4-eye in a 3-4 defense. The way a lot of coaches are just absolutely miserable when they try to teach a college pass rusher how to defend the run. I think that Tyree Wilson will be okay with it. Okay, that's kept his feet, chasing down from the backside. This is getting tough late in this game too. Let me change this view here so you can see the challenge here that he would face, which is the it's 20-0 at the end of the second quarter. It doesn't get much better for the rest of the game. So we'll probably we'll say adios at the end of this because we've got to get to Jalen Carter. But NC State offensive linemen, they've been giving him the business the whole game. There he he doesn't sort it out in the backfield on this one. Could have done a better job there. But they're giving him the business, and as you're losing, that's when it gets tough not to be frustrated. Look at that. Look at that scrappy little right tackle there, getting after him. I want to get into the Jalen Carter stuff. So I'll say that I really like Tyree Wilson. Honestly, I'm surprised that he seems to be a consensus second guy to Will Anderson. I think Will Anderson's been in the public consciousness a lot longer. He's played for Alabama. I could totally see these guys flip-flopping just depending on which guy fits your defense the best, which guy is your type of guy. So, Jalen Carter. All right, where do we begin with Jalen Carter? I'm going to take some water here. Jalen Carter is everything you want in a defensive tackle in multiple different schemes. He can play really anywhere on the line of scrimmage. And look, I would say even in specific packages, in short yardage or what have you in the NFL, I would play him at defensive end. Just because, like, if you had a big heavy nickel or something like that, he's really that versatile. He's not extraordinarily long. He's not freakish or anything, but he's really, really good at a lot of things. And if we're going to back this up a little bit here and just look at what Danny Kelly says, bulldozer power, rare versatility, pass rush talent. Yes, he has all those things. Interior penetrator who combines bulldozer power with shockingly nimble feet. He consistently forklifts offensive linemen and wrecks pockets. That's weird. It's for some reason I was expecting Rex to be written REX right there. Yeah, he's all these things. I'm a little guilty of when I first started watching Jalen Carter carefully. I was a little bit underwhelmed because he does so many things so well that it doesn't necessarily stick out, and because he's so smooth of an athlete, he doesn't look like violently explosive the way a lot of other guys do. That's where I think some of the comparisons are a little off when they talk about his twitchiness, but he covers a lot of ground very quickly. This is the other part that we'll spend most of the second part of this talking about with Jalen Carter. I know it's early in the process, but I'm forewarning everybody out there. Carter is going to be a hot button name when we talk about some of the intangible aspects of it. So that was Todd McShay back in like late December, and he got a whole lot of guff for that, as we all know by now. And frankly, it was called for. There was stuff that they found out just about, various anonymous scouts talking about questioning his maturity. There was another traffic incident before the really awful tragedy in which he pled no contest to reckless driving, whatever it was with the drag racing incident where two people in another car, a teammate and a staffer, were killed. So that was the big news that broke right before the combine. I'd like to stick to the football part of it first. And let me get this fixed for a second. We'll scroll that across the bottom. for anybody joining us and show that, and then get up to the Jalen Carter stuff. So, like, if we start off by watching his highlights, he does so many things really well. We were just talking about Tyree Wilson, how a lot of times he's the last guy off the line of scrimmage, last guy off the ball. When you see that with Jalen Carter, it's usually for a very specific reason. Did you guys lose me? Where'd I go? There we go. It's usually for a very specific reason. And let's see. Okay, it's usually for a very specific reason. Here he's he is in a bit of a run stuffer stance and ends up chop rip, like almost like a ghost rush too, deep into the backfield. You're gonna see again. This is him, and we'll watch a bunch of snaps from the Oregon game later because he was dealing with an injury in this game, and you still saw this. Where watch the right right offensive tackle here versus number 88. He made it look like it was just a little pop of the hips, and boom. And watch 71 as he made an admirable attempt to try to trip him, but then looked away in shame and disgust with himself. You see a little bit more of this here. He's not even like technically gap sound here, but in short yardage, like just stands that guy up like he's nothing. That Tennessee offensive line are some brutes, as we saw earlier. Playing defensive tackle here again, not in like an extreme pass rush stance. Just gets so deep into the backfield so quickly that he just disrupts a lot of plays. This play is designed that the center should easily be able to block back on him. This is the same play again, but okay, look, everybody else is still in their stance. So you see Jalen Carter there, up out of his stance already. The center, like geometrically can't get to him because he's out of his stance so fast, and that pulling guard just prevents the center from being able to take the proper angle. And there he is in the backfield. And he's not like extraordinarily long the way Tyree Wilson is. You're going to see some people talk about how he can go from a 2-point stance. And I frankly don't think that's one thing he should, unless he's in an amoeba front or something. There's no reason for him to do that. Here, it may have worked maybe with the offensive line counting guys because they just flat out don't block him there. And so I would advise, this is like when you forget to guard Steph Curry. It's frowned upon, especially against the Georgia defense. Here he is down at the bottom of the defensive line. Really active hands. Like he got locked out there and lost the initial part of the pass rush, but he kept going. And here he is. I missed it. I was trying to read your comments. Oh, yeah, there he just kind of snuck in from out of nowhere. Same thing in a lot of these short yardage. He gets very, very low for a guy who's right here. So he's slanting inside, and he covers a lot of ground. He takes big steps, and then he gets up underneath the pads out of that athletic offensive lineman. That's a smaller, more athletic offensive lineman. He gets up underneath his pads, jacks him into the backfield, makes the play. You see a lot of that out of Jalen Carter. And as a football player on in there, he's not in a pass rush stance. He's in a run stopping stance with a squattier base. Like, look at his pad level. He's the one at the bottom of the screen, or the bottom of the defensive line on the left. Look at his pad level versus that offensive lineman. There's just no chance. And then this is what he also shows, a whole lot of patience when he's playing gap control, sheds, tackles. He's a pretty sound and certain tackler for a guy his size. Let's see. Standing up here, this is versus Tennessee, which I think I threw in a few just Tennessees because those guys are, again, we've shown they're established hosses. Quick arm over. Okay, that's okay. Remember we were talking earlier about the useless spins. This is like, I don't know what he's doing here. I think guys sometimes get lost and they don't. But here it's bad because he's spinning back inside with no force or conviction, but he's also supposed to be the contain guy. So like right there, he's hitting a spin because he thought, hey, I'm going to hit a spin. That offensive tackle is doing nothing to show that he should. He should be like, Jalen should get more upfield here before he starts this spin, but he just kind of spins back into a dude, and there you go. But it's not like it's a bad habit with him or anything like that. Okay. There are times where on this play, I mean, Oregon just decides to cave down that whole side of the line and quick toss it out to the outside. They do a few things kind of like this in this game. In the second half, Jalen Carter starts to figure it out. He looks really sloppy here. I mean, it's that's more than a double team like on a duo or something. That's just flat out, we want to laterally displace this guy. You'd like to see the backers and safeties fill in the void behind that, but Carter can do a better job, and he does start doing a better job anticipating that later in the game. Just showing you some of the weaknesses here. Right there, he's the left defensive end. Just lets the guy get right into his chest. At this point, it's midway through the fourth quarter. Georgia's winning by a pretty healthy margin, but he just lets him right into his chest and gets washed out a little bit. Just to show you since I love showing you guys these spider graphs, he had a little bit of an incident right before the combine. That warrant was issued, so he left the combine to go turn himself in, and then he went back to the combine, but he didn't work out at all. Just to look at him, like none of this is a negative, but I think it's important to show that, like, by height, weight, arm length, hand size, he's not a freakishly large dude. He's not like a John Henderson from back in the day, or another Georgia guy, Marcus Stroud. Like, I think Marcus was more physically imposing. It's just that Jalen does all of these other things really, really well, and he's very explosive across the line of scrimmage. Why he could rise. This is from Danny Kelly, I believe. Let's see. Let's just do this. He's a twitchy 3-down defensive lineman with extraordinary quickness and power. Not many dudes his size move the way he does. This is how you could tell this was from before any of the vehicular issues. He says he never posted elite sack numbers. I don't know. I'm reaching here. Yeah, there'd be no reason to reach later on. We would figure out some things that didn't quite go his way. Let me pause and get back to the main issues at hand here. StreamYard stuff is fun, but annoys. This is Will Anderson. What the hell's going on here? Damn it. All right, let me get rid of Will Anderson. Who's this? That's Will Anderson. What the hell's going on here? All right, there we go. The Ohio State game, we can show a little bit of that later. I want to get to some of the later in the Ohio State game. You can see Jalen Carter is inside there, gets caved down. This is one of the ones that people had pointed out to him, having trouble keeping his feet at times. I think that there are a couple things about him not keeping his feet. In this instance, I feel like he can keep his feet better there. There were a couple instances where he got caught up in the wash and lost his feet. I think this was an instant where were some instances where his injuries may have been doing him in. I liked this one because he just did a good job as a guy doing a TE stunt. He first picked the offensive tackle and cleared him out of the way. 2-man rush right here, which this is important. Okay, when you've got a 2-man pass rush going, there are times where, and this is also where CJ Stroud was showing off his newfound ability to scramble and make things happen. So right here, you've got 2 defensive tackles rushing. There's a tendency by a lot of guys to make that into even a worse defense than it can sometimes be by thinking like, oh, all right, it's 2-man rush, 3-man rush, whatever it is. I'm just going to get double teamed. I'm just going to phone it in. Like, watch Jalen Carter work here. This is where I say that, like, for all of his issues off the field, he busts his ass on the field. Like, he flushed the pocket there, ends up, somebody else can get it to force Stroud out of bounds there before him. I think I started. This is the game where I was watching Jalen Carter and then started watching CJ Stroud and said, oh, yeah, tipped ball there. That could have been a pass interference. But Jalen Carter got a tipped ball. Because I saw some people say that Carter fizzled out at the end of this game. And I think he looked gassed, but I thought he played his ass off. Like, I think that he played a lot of snaps and played his ass off while doing. I mean, look at him there. Like he started off as a left defensive tackle there. If you're seeing him, he's up at the top. Like watch how active his hands are here. This is in the fourth quarter. Still running. Fourth quarter. I mean, yeah, he's tired, but he's oh yeah, look at him jump. He's 310-pound dude. 310-pound dude, like hoofing it out at the end of a game like that. Here he is, left defensive tackle, going up against these two dudes. Splits them, makes the play. This is him as a fullback a couple of years ago. And the cool thing about this too was, okay, I want you to two things. One is they broke out of the huddle very quickly. He got up, got in line, knew what he was doing. You can see right there, he does not look like a fat defensive tackle. But watch how many guys he blocks on this play. 1, 2, 3. That's it. Just 3. Remember the Watt fork and how disastrous it was? I feel like we could successfully pull off the Watt fork here. Watch him. Boom. He can get low when he wants to. And he's wearing a hoodie underneath his pads. This is this is the same play. Yeah, watch. They set up very quickly. That actually, honestly, impresses me more than anything else. When you ask a defensive lineman to do something that he's never done before, and then we're simple creatures, us defensive linemen. I don't know why. Like when we try to edit a video and not show the same play twice in a row. That look at that. Look at that. The triple extension. You can tell. You can tell he takes coaching well. Okay, so this is the one thing that I found when I started looking into various things that might have been considered either maturity or character issues. This was before the Missouri game. Something happened during warmups where you can see Jalen Carter is the guy right at the center of your screen right now. And this is my first indication that he's got a little bit of the crazy eyes to him. For one, it looks like he may want to take on the entire team beforehand. He's pointing dudes out. Look at his eyes. He's not. You know, they say sometimes sociopaths aren't. They're not nervous when other people would be nervous. I feel like he's not even angry. He's just toying with human creatures. And credit, by the way, to Missouri's strength and conditioning staff, because these dudes are yoked. Stackhouse knows, Stackhouse is. I've seen in a couple instances where Jalen is the guy that you can tell guys are used to having to talk sense to him. Like, all right, Jalen, listen. Here we go. Okay, buddy. Those dudes are. I gotta get back in the gym. I feel very meek and pathetic next to these college kids. My God. So it's still going on. You see, I feel like Jalen Carter is not one of these big dudes who's actually kind of soft inside. I feel like he's actually been in a few fist fights in his life, and maybe even as a younger kid got his butt beat and just doesn't care. Like he. So I don't know if that's good or that's bad. When there's reports about maturity issues. He's either a world-class troll. I think I put in that kid right there. I like that Missouri offensive lineman. I just like the look on his face. I like that kid. I'm going to interview him. I'll raise some NIL money for that kid. Okay, so here's the infamous. Let's just leave this in all its glory. This is the infamous pro day. Damn it. Where I got to be honest with you, I think if there's one thing about going to Georgia, it's that you go against other world-class. You've got other world-class athletes next to you all the time, and it can end up making you look a lot worse. He was tired, and out of shape in this. I cut him a little bit of a break just because this was a couple of weeks after he had his arrest. Everything was going on. Other Georgia guys that were also either involved with that or, I think affected by that Nolan Smith. I believe he's next to Nolan Smith here. Those guys showed up in shape. So is that a sign of maturity that maybe he wasn't resting and eating and sleeping as well as he should have been? I don't know. Or it's a sign of just him still being distraught over a really bad situation. But he also does look a lot worse running next to Nolan Smith, who's a freak athlete. This was earlier in the workout. I think one of the biggest mistakes he made at this pro day, where like here, I think early on in the beginning, he didn't look that bad. Biggest mistake he made was taking his shirt off. Dumb move. You can't you can't take your shirt off unless you look unless you look like if you're JJ Watt or somebody like that. Don't take your shirt off. I was about to say Aaron Donald, but I went back and I watched Aaron Donald in college, and I've forgotten he had a little bit of thickness to him, like in a pudgy way. I could see and it was freakish how good he was in college. The kid from Pitt right now, that 6 foot tall kid from Pitt, people are comparing him to Aaron Donald for obvious reasons. But man, Aaron Donald was just a beast. He played so far above his body weight and his height in college that he could have gone either way. Like if he had lost a little bit of weight, he could have been a John Randall. If he had gained a little bit of weight, he could have been like the nose tackle. Oh, I'm blanking on his name. Jerry Ball. Remember Jerry Ball was like 6'1", 350 pounds. I feel like Aaron Donald could have been that dude, which I think he should. Aaron Donald should just try to be a run stuffing defensive tackle. Like when he wants to retire, instead blow it up to like 340 and be a run stuffing defensive tackle who comes in every now and then on third downs and just enjoy life for a little bit. You've been too shredded for too long. So let me get to the part of. We've got a little bit more Jalen Carter here. Oh, no. Okay. So let's go with Nolan Smith. This is Nolan Smith talking about Jalen Carter when asked at the combine about his issues.
Man, a lot of people worry, but that's again, he's misunderstood, man. You think that my dog worried about first round grazing. No, man, my dog loved football and he loved being out.
Okay, so this was in response to, I believe, a question about the fact that Jalen Carter played through 2 injuries, an ankle injury and a knee injury. And I'm glad you know what, Nolan Smith, thank you for bringing this up in this video that I put together. I think that he deserves a lot of credit for a guy that was going to be, without the vehicular issues, a top 4 pick no matter what. I think Jalen Carter would have been a top 4 pick, depending on what happens with the quarterbacks. We all know it's about that. Oh, boy. All right. He's going to be a top 5 pick no matter what. And I think now he's creeping back up towards that. But I think that he played through an ankle injury and he played through a knee injury that a lot of guys like Nick Bosa. Remember, Nick Bosa didn't play his senior year after he got injured. I think a lot of guys would have sat it out. I think when you watch Jalen Carter play, there's so many things that just look like the right kind of dude. And, we're in an era where people don't question or mark down like a Smith and Jigba for sitting out and trying to protect his draft status. But it's an extra mark in your favor if you do play through some stuff. And some of the bad film that people will point out of Jalen Carter is specifically when he is either playing with an injury or in his first game back with an injury, like it was versus Florida this year. So that's what he's talking about here, as well as some of the other issues.
They're playing with us, and that's what I say. A lot of people put bad lights on him and stuff like that. Man, he wasn't worrying about 40 snaps or 50 snaps or getting to the league or none of that. He was worrying about winning games, and that's what we do at Georgia. We win games.
Does it bother you that people question his character?
It bothers me deeply because people just don't know. Like, if you can't question somebody's character, especially like if you question my character, I feel like that's an insult, and I hope you're ready to fight if you question my character.
I like that too, by the way, because Nolan Smith is awesome, and he's just reportedly the salt of the earth, awesome dude and everything. And yet that's like the kind of reputation you need to have to be able to say, I feel like you got to be ready to fight if you say that. Because there's other guys up here that you're like, don't listen, if you're their agent, like this Ixnay on the Iting Fay. Don't be talking about being ready to fight. Nobody's worried about Nolan Smith getting in a barroom brawl or anything. That's how he gets you. Sucker punches you in the barroom brawl. Let's see. I think I got one more Nolan. Okay, I might have put this Nolan Smith in just for the hell of him talking about the tragedy of the vehicle. I kind of just as a insight into just what it is probably like for a lot of those guys. It's a lot easier, and I'm guilty of this too. I think sometimes you see something surface level and you forget that, like, oh yeah, like these are college kids still that are dealing with a big tragedy. A teammate and a friend of theirs got killed, and Jalen Carter was involved with it, but he wasn't like not on a felonious level or anything. There's grieving that's going on during this.
Hear this, stick it out. Just because things get tough.
Okay, so then they were asking about guys. He's talking here about guys like Smith and Jigba. Well, not like Smith. He's talking about guys who want to transfer in the transfer portal. This is advice he would give to those guys. And then later on, he has to answer an awkward one about guys on his team that have transferred.
Don't run away from things. Like in life, when things get tough, you're going to quit on your wife, you're going to quit on your kids, you're going to transfer on your wife and kids when things get tough. What if you married to your wife for 10 years and she get cancer, you just going to get up and leave? That's how I think about it, man. You be a man of character no matter what you do, and that's how my mom raised me.
There's a big plus for the ladies right there. That's a touchstone. Not leaving. He was saying, well, you're just going to transfer on your wife, and I think a lot of people were like, well, I mean, Lovey Smith would tell you sometimes divorce is a good thing, but not when she's got cancer. Yeah. So he did have another part in there with the where he got very sad and distraught over the issue. This was one of the things that came up. About to show you. This was a vehicle stop in which Jalen Carter. Now remember, this isn't during the football season. Jalen Carter was pulled over for going 89 and a 45. It was, yeah.
All right. Man, I've stopped a bunch of those football players. I already stopped Darnell Washington.
Darnell Washington's got to be like, no!
Stopped Dylan Fairchild.
No! And he was the peacekeeper in that last video we were watching.
I just stopped Washington. I stopped yesterday. Fairchild just stopped like a minute ago. He's going 70 right here. I don't need to slow down, dude. I had to take a picture of your VIN, okay? Because it ain't pulling up because it's a dealer tag.
Yeah, that's what happened with my last one. Trying to get.
So the best I could tell was, Jalen Carter, who's being very polite here. He's driving he's from Florida. He's from Apopka, which I'm glad came up because I got to address some weird thing I read. I think I know the reason for it. He's from Apopka, Florida, and I'm guessing he had a dealer plate or from somebody in Florida or something. And then I was fascinated to watch this just because I've never seen the tint be measured by the cops. Takes a picture of the VIN.
All right, man. You gotta crack your window, okay? Little.
Cracks the window.
A little bit more. Right there. I don't want you to jack it all over, okay?
And I thought at first that he was having him do that just because, like, when he walked up on the car, Jalen Carter had like those deep, dark tinted windows rolled all the way up. Roll the windows down when you get pulled over,
okay?
everybody.
There's a test meter in the car is 24%. The registered 24%. So in Georgia, the darkest it can be is 29%. So it's
Okay, so 29% tint is the
32%
darkest.
plus or minus 3. So the darkest it can be is 29%. All right. You're at 5, my man. So what? Limo 10, I guess. Is that what you got? So the other thing is, in Georgia, this windshield, the front windshield, it can't have nothing on it, no material on it whatsoever.
Okay, so keep your window tint proper, everybody. But so he got away with a warning on that, which that's okay. You got away with a warning on that. I tell you from experience that, like in the NFL, it's not going to be quite so lenient as small college town. There's going to be times where you get out of stuff, or guys will get out of stuff. But there's also a lot more. They need to be by the book. Like in Houston, partly you also have so many different police precincts. Like obviously, anyway, just you can't be doing that crap. I feel like some of this is on Kirby Smart just for having. I don't want to blame him for his guys driving too fast, but it sounded like in that one spot, and that was a much longer traffic or much longer video. In that one spot, aside from the guys that he mentioned, there's just been an issue with players speeding, and in the football office had been notified about it. But anyway, so this is versus Florida. You see Jalen Carter. This was, I believe, his first game back after he had sprained his MCL and missed a couple games. And he's going to be going against Osiris Torrance, who's a big beast of a right guard, just a really big, strong dude. But right here, he goes against the center with a block back. This, again, is he's got his hands a little bit outside, but he's so strong, and you're going to watch him. He throws a little too early here, but he makes the play. He didn't throw too early. He had a good feel for when to throw. Sometimes guys there will throw across too early and then leave a void. He didn't do that there because I think he had a good sense for it. There's other plays where he actually where he stayed and didn't throw and was there for when the ball came back. This is going to be, again, against Osiris Torrance, number 54 there. I believe this is a double team that he does a really good job of dropping his shoulder, splitting it. This was brought up as a negative by somebody I saw. And I'm going to be honest with you. Okay, so these are 2 separate plays. There's the first one, 3 separate plays. Second one, he takes on a double team. Good job there. And then this one, okay, this is going to be a zone run to Florida's left. The left defensive tackle over number 54, the right guard, is going to be our guy, Jalen Carter. He gets scooped here by the guard and tackle, but the thing about this is that he is occupying 2. It's really hard the way those guys did that. When they're going to stack that aggressively, it's really hard to not get overtaken. And then the important thing is he holds those guys like the Dickens and lets other guys run free. So that's not as bad as I think I've seen some people make it out to be. There he splits a double team on the other side of the screen. Here he is against the right guard, Osiris Torrance again. He's going to the outside and then redirecting back to the inside. So he was doing contain, recognizes the play, comes back inside, keeps his feet. Here he is, left defensive tackle, rushing against Osiris on a TE stunt. So he knows where he fits. He's going to pick that offensive tackle. Here he is, left defensive tackle again. Active hands on Osiris, gets through. That was a nice rush. He is, over the nose tackle at this point. Running a stunt. Loses his feet there. He got caught up in the wash a little bit there. And then this is the entire game versus Oregon, which I thought this was a good one just because he showed a lot of his good stuff, and he was playing through a sprained ankle in this game. Really good active hands there. What time's the Astros game begin? What time's the oh, we got time. Okay. Somebody tell me in the comments if I'm going to miss the Astros game. All right. Run stance, but getting a pass set. Okay, he's running a game again there, understands where he fits. These Georgia kids are so well coached. Like the Georgia kids and the Alabama kids, they just do the right things. And Tyree Wilson does the right thing too. Okay, this one. I mean, that's like an all-out mauling more so than a conventional combo block. This one, they caved down on him. And you're going to see that hurt him early in the game. He started to be aware of it and figure it out. Real slow off the ball here. I'd like to give him credit for maybe sensing that there was a screen coming. You're going to see this too. Just something little. Not a big deal, except I noticed it early on. Was watch him. Okay, so Jalen Carter right there. Just watch the little motion he makes. A lot of times, like there's good communication with him going on, and sometimes you can tell he's calling off a game, or he's alerting something to somebody. That's one of the hardest things to teach rookies is to communicate. Like the rookies are quiet. They won't alert guys to other things. They won't remind guys of other things, and it's a pain in the butt. Like, so it's nice to see guys that get that early on. He communicates a lot with his guys before the snap. He's a really good football player. Oh, okay. Here's an example. He's keeping his gap. He stayed to the outside when he could have thrown across early. That's discipline. That's him not being selfish. The Apopka thing that I was telling you about earlier. I heard a weird comparison. Because Bruce Feldman, in his mock draft, said something about Jalen Carter drawing comparisons to Warren Sapp. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? It's not. I haven't seen that anywhere in terms of as a football player or an athlete. Like Warren Sapp, they're different types of athletes. Warren Sapp had a sloppy body, but did not play like a sloppy. And Warren Sapp certainly didn't play against the run the way that Jalen Carter does and will be able to. But Warren Sapp is from Apopka. And I know a little bit about Apopka, Florida, because my wife was a safe counselor at Apopka, which is, okay, here we go. We got to watch this. So look, one thing you can see right here, Jalen Carter does a good job of taking big steps. It's another thing you want to teach young guys. You cover a lot more ground faster with one big step than two small steps in the right moment. You know, there's a time for short, choppy steps, but when you're slanting, you want to take big steps. So he takes a big step, puts it down, stays low, redirects upfield, and then just, dude, that's awesome, man. That's a good feeling. That feels so good. That's such a good feeling. So anyway, man. So Apopka, my wife was a safe coordinator, which was somebody that was, she worked with kids who were trying to get out of gangs and or had some kind of issues, you know, violent issues at times with other kids. But the gangs were a big issue at that time back then. So my wife would work with these kids. So she saw the worst side of Apopka. Don't get me wrong. It's not like she was working with every kid in the school or anything, but it was a rough place. Like it's a tough school. And, you know, my wife coached JV basketball and had like barely ever any parents come to the games. You know, she had one girl whose older sister was there a lot. It was just it's a tough place to grow up. And I think when people compare him to Warren Sapp, it might just be that, hey, like this is I don't want to speak about Warren Sapp's personality or anything, but as far as Jalen Carter and how he might have come up, I don't know his family situation. But I know there's a lot of times there's like the kids my wife worked with, there's some really, really good kids that grew up in a tough environment and ended up doing really great things and working their way. Like the kids my wife was the kids that my wife was working with, kids she was working with, like wanted to not get in trouble. They were very motivated to, you know, rise above whatever trouble they'd created for themselves that they found themselves in. And I think Jalen Carter, man, like the way he plays football, like with a selflessness, I gotta feel like there's like this is not a dude who's just a bad dude, you know, and maybe he has some maturity issues, but that he's trying to do the right thing a lot. There was that spin back into nowhere. And this is he's going to be a guy that a lot of people are really going to lean heavily on the evaluations. Coaches, the guys they know exactly what they, you know, feel about him. Jackie Slater versus Reggie White, 1990. Oh, I'm going to have to watch that. You see that there to the left?
Stephen Jones move. Ball start. Offense. Number 74.
These guys put the end cap screens on here for a long time.
Would hope Duck fans wouldn't rush to a quick judgment based on this performance alone.
So, like, it's hard not to like him as a player. I think as long as, like, what you would worry about with a guy who has maturity issues is is he going to have issues with the law? I mean, so far we've seen reckless driving, and I don't want to diminish that, obviously, given what the issues are that he's had, you know, or the tragedy that they had. But it's not that we know of crimes against other people. You know, I always look at it as, okay, there's crimes against yourself and there's crimes against society. And a lot of times guys that are either immature or guys that have substance abuse issues or what have you, like those are crimes against oneself. And that they don't necessarily mean that a guy's a bad guy. It's that the guy's just got to grow up a little bit, or the guy just has judgment issues. Sometimes you don't grow out of that. Sometimes you have judgment issues. And then there's crimes against society or dudes that are just bad dudes. You know, like an example of the first type of person I was talking about, crimes against oneself, like Michael Irvin. Given regardless, I don't know what's going on with the latest incident, but at least Michael Irvin, when he was a player, was known as an awesome teammate, a guy that cared about his teammates. He got into issues off the field that were his own personal demons, but he was a good dude. It feels like with Jalen Carter that his teammates think he's a good dude. You know, it's like there is no lack of people rushing to his defense, and they're doing it emphatically. So if I were the Seattle Seahawks, like for instance, if I were the Seahawks and I had to choose, a lot of time, I think in a lot of these mock drafts, it's been between Will Anderson and Jalen Carter. I think I'd like Jalen Carter. I think Jalen Carter's got more chance to be an absolute badass butt whooper than anybody else. So, and here's let's see, Mina Kimes. Since we were talking about Tyree Wilson earlier, let me do my little on the fly editing thing. I'm having so much fun with YouTube. I've noticed it's more civil in the comments, and I don't know if that's because of censoring or because I'm just like I'm trying to be anti-talk radio, sports radio on this, and like because sports radio has moved away from the hot takes anyway as of late. Thank you for the podcasts doing that, but also just it's I don't feel good afterwards. I don't like doing hot takes anymore. I feel like it's just not as much fun.
Yeah.
So Mina Kimes on Tyree Wilson.
Talked about the measurables. I'm really curious to see where his wingspan comes in, because that dude is built like a pterodactyl, and it shows on the field. The length and the way he uses those long arms, coupled with his insane closing speed, it's really remarkable. He has speed, he has power, he doesn't have a complete set of pass rushing moves. But where he's different from Trevon Walker is he has proven already that he can get after the quarterback. At the very top, we showed a stat that he has a 20% pressure rate, which is top in FBS. Walker in his final year at Georgia, rushing just from the edge, I know he lined up all over, was only at 8%, which was 154th. So Wilson has already shown that ability. I do think he needs to work on his moves, but his upside is pretty extraordinary.
Man, watch out.
Okay, so I'm glad she mentioned Trayvon Walker there too, because I think Trayvon Walker was a guy who was a late riser after the combine last year because he was just a physical freak show. And people drafted, he was overdrafted, I think. A lot of people would think. I personally, before the draft, I felt like he wasn't worth a top 5 pick because he hadn't really established himself as a dominant edge rusher in college. And a lot of that speed and athleticism and power didn't really show up in the ways that you needed to show up for a dominant edge rusher. Tyree Wilson, I think, is more of a guy that a lot of people wanted to believe was for real and came on is like a guy that just got better through his career. And maybe as a transfer, he didn't get quite as much of a head start because he wasn't playing on a Georgia-type defense. He wasn't playing on an Alabama-type defense. So I think that people have lumped him in with Trayvon Walker in kind of a weird way, just because I think he's more late to the public consciousness nationwide. He's not, in the Big 12, obviously, people know who he is. But I think he's the real deal. I think that there are going to be a lot of teams that look at him and just think, the downside is pretty low. The guy's, unless he gets injured because he's too banged up too often, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Another thing I wanted to do, let me take some of these questions here, and then I wanted to answer some questions from previous podcasts if we have time. All right, so Brohawk, I kept saying go Johnston for the 12th pick, but I think we can get a good weapon to add to our receiver core in later rounds. Possible Myles Murphy on the 12th pick. What are your thoughts? Myles Murphy, yes, I like Myles Murphy. Of the two guys from Clemson, Myles Murphy and the Bresee kid, I like Myles Murphy better. I think he's got more upside. Bresee, however you pronounce it, he's been banged up a lot. This last year, I didn't feel like he was actually beating offensive linemen with the production that he did have. I felt like he was doing a lot of it with twists and stunts. And it's tough because his sister died from cancer at some point in the last calendar year. And I think a lot of people really thought that was distracting him. He's been a big name since he was in high school. And I think the feeling is that he didn't quite live up to that production. I don't know. I've watched mostly 2022. I want to go back with Brisset and watch some from 2021 because apparently he was just a lot better. I keep hearing about what a tough guy he is and everything. I feel like there's a little bit of Giacomini toughness, which is when you shove guys after the play, people think like, oh, that guy's tough. I'm like, well, I'd like to see you beat somebody during the play maybe before we start labeling people super tough. The college tough guy, I have a lot. I got a grudge against some of the college tough guys because you see it enough when you're a player and you read these scouting reports out of guys like these college offensive linemen that are just so tough. Guys are scared of him, and like nobody's scared of anybody except Orlando Brown Sr. That dude was scary, Zeus. Or that's like unlike any other human being you've ever seen in life or the movies. Let's see. Frank Z says Texans will take Jalen Carter, get the McNairs to reserve a racetrack and race car. Hey, whoa. Rubbin's racing. Tasteless joke. I didn't mean to leave that up there. I was reading the other stuff. I apologize. As far as, you know what, though? As far as the Texans and Jalen Carter, if Jalen Carter dropped to 12, God, I hope they would take him. Yeah, the one thing is if Jalen Carter drops to 12, and I want to bring up Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft just for the hell of it. Because that'll be the Bruce Feldman mock draft. I'm gonna run through that with you guys in a little bit because that is good stuff. Like they've got some good anonymous stuff. Other than that really weird quote about Warren Sapp and Jalen Carter, it's really good stuff. So let's share this. Let me present to you a screen of Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft. Okay, so he has Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, then Will Anderson. Bucked you out there, buddy. Anthony Richardson, who, by the way, man, I've been watching some Anthony Richardson. Oh, God. Oh, man, I'm getting more nervous about him. Here's the thing you got to understand about Anthony Richardson. He knows what he's doing. Like he's when his bad throws are really bad, but he's way smarter than people want to give him credit for or realize. I think because there's times where he extends plays because I think there's a tendency to think that because he's so big and strong that he's extending plays in the pocket just because he can. And that maybe he isn't going through the progressions. He's totally going through the progressions. And there's times where he's holding on to it and then throwing the ball away because that's the right thing to do. Like he's way more mature as an intellectual processor than I think people realize. So anyway, Anthony Richardson potentially to the Colts, Jalen Carter to the Seahawks. So we're seeing that a lot. Jalen Carter to the Seahawks. Tyree Wilson to the Seahawks, Will Anderson to the Cardinals, like these various scenarios. Those two guys are gone. So for Jalen Carter would have to make it past either the Cardinals or whoever trades into number 3. He'd have to make it past the Seahawks. He'd have to make it past the Lions, the Raiders, the Falcons, who honestly, I don't see him making it past the Falcons. Skoronski, I'm going to have words about Skoronski. I'm not so sure about Skoronski, man. And Lucas Van Ness, if you guys have watched the video I did on him, I don't think he's worth a 10th pick overall or an 11th or a 12th or a 13th. So down to Miles Murphy. Let's see what Lance Zierlein has. This is another nice thing about YouTube is that I cite my good buddy Lance Zierlein quite a bit. Radio competitor of mine. But Lance says Murphy has excellent size traits, has been consistently productive in impact categories for 3 straight years. He plays with a plus motor and good first step quickness, but his game isn't really twitchy or explosive. And that's the part that I agree with. I think when it gets to the twitchiness, you just don't see that with Miles Murphy. You really don't see it with any of those guys other than the three guys that I started off talking about today. And I think that's why there's a clear distinction. When you look at Jeremiah's big board, there's a clear distinction between the those top three edge rushers / defensive linemen and everybody else. Like Van Ness, of the edge rushers and defensive linemen, Daniel Jeremiah's fourth guy is Van Ness with Smith behind him. And like those aren't guys that I think that would typically be great. This is that kind of year where it's not an awesome draft at the top, other than the first few guys and other than the quarterbacks, just because there's more guys that look like they could be guys. It's not a great year. And unfortunately, I think the Texans will likely end up drafting somebody at 12. And for this year's draft, they'll be fine. It's just a shame that once again, the Texans have chosen to suck in the wrong year or get a Cleveland pick in the wrong year. So let's see. I want to share the screen of Bruce Feldman and show you what Bruce Feldman said about, well, there's Tyree Wilson, the coaching intel. So he has the size and great length. I thought he played better a year ago. He affected games more then. I left that game thinking, man, he's a dude. So this is a college coach. He's really good, but I didn't think lottery pick. He's just not as consistent, but talent-wise, it's definitely there. So I think that's the consistency. The other part is the part about him making tremendous progress. He has great motor and strength. He's really strong when he goes speed to power. He can walk tackles back. He really can't play in space that well. He's a little stiff and did not look comfortable in space. Yeah, so with Tyree Wilson, I 100% agree with that. I think that you're not worried about it, though. It's just that's just what you're going to get with Tyree Wilson. He's not going to be a 3-4 outside linebacker. So this is on Jalen Carter. Where is the Warren Sapp thing? Oh, here we go. Seattle needs a lot of help on defense. And Carter, who has drawn comparisons to Pro Football Hall of Famer Warren Sapp, is the most gifted defensive player in the draft. And then he goes on to explain his, you know what, since I didn't give the full appraisal, pleaded no contest to misdemeanor charges of racing and reckless driving after a police investigation. So look, Warren Sapp is a horrible comp. That's not fair to Warren Sapp. God rest his soul. I know he's still alive, but as far as I want you to watch. We watched Jalen Carter. I just want to remind people a little bit about Warren Sapp and exactly like what he was as a player, because it's not. Let's see. Stop screen. Present. Share screen. Entire screen. Warren Sapp. There we go. All right, here's Warren Sapp. Before the draft, remember, he fell because of issues. So the comparison was about just the guy having issues, I think. Played in 1953, apparently. There we go. Look at that. The thing about Sapp is that he was so much more athletic than his body type. Is that our old friend in Houston, Jerry Glanville's voice on the color commentary? Like, that's an explosiveness there. It's true. Look at that change of direction there. We were talking earlier about Tyree Wilson not having the change of direction in the open field. Like, yeah, that's the stuff that turns you into a Hall of Famer right there. Like, that's interior. That Tampa front was so sick. Well, that wasn't Sapp. That was that white dude there. I'll only subject you guys to this one more. Look right there, man. All right, so we've established he's not Warren Sapp, right? All right, stop sharing. But I do want to get back to Bruce Feldman's mock draft. I don't want you guys to see what pop-ups. There's that. Is that Built Brand? That's it. Look, that's what I'm wearing right now. You can't. Oh, you can't see it. All right, let me show it to you. There you go. Right there. Built Brand. Love it. Right there. They don't they're not a sponsor or anything. So I don't buy that on the comp. I think that's more about just those guys being from Apopka. As far as Bruce Feldman, anonymous college coaches on Will Anderson, who I like a lot, but I just don't think he's this ethereal future Hall of Fame Von Miller type. Getting a lot of sacks usually comes down to desire, want, and grit. And he's really got that. Here's what I also really love about him. He's out there on PAT and field goal block, and he's going like it's the last play of his career. His motor is fantastic. I do like that. Like the downside of him is so low just because he's going to do the right thing. Like he's going to play his butt off. I love him. He plays with tremendous speed. Everybody tried to account for him in every possible way this year. So maybe that's why he didn't quite put up as big numbers as he did last year. I know their staff really well, and they talked about how he's so coachable. And whether it's what you see on film or in the game, you can tell he kind of took that all in. So I like all these guys. I think the Van Ness guy, if the Texans take Van Ness, I'm going to be a little bit skeptical of. I did a video on him if you want to watch that, because he's fast, but not necessarily with a whole lot of power to back it up. Just funny. If you look at like Will Anderson, he's smaller than Van Ness, but I think he's got more on a pound for pound basis. He can generate power in closed quarters. With Van Ness, he's got to get ahead of steam, and then he hits you with speed to power. But for a big guy, he's not that actually strong. Like, he's not weight room strong, and that doesn't always mean anything, except when you watch him play, he doesn't look weight room strong either. Like when the game slows down and you're hand fighting, can you win after you're at a stalemate? And I don't see that with Van Ness. And Van Ness is not going to be a 3-4 outside linebacker the way that Will Anderson might. More questions from listeners. As far as which tattoo to get, Barbacoa says, just go to your local tattoo parlor and ask the artist to tat you up with some neat-looking Chinese script. You can Google the meaning later. That reminds me of a story. It was one of the best comebacks I ever had to, and it's one that I can't tell on radio, and I probably shouldn't tell here. I won't use all the same verbiage. But I was at a bar, and there was a really drunk woman next to my future wife and a couple of our friends, and we were just sitting there having a nice quiet time. I was with Brandy. I wasn't trying to impress anybody. We're just having a conversation, and one of our other friends came up, and this woman to our right had been very loud and obnoxious. However you might frame this in your mind, just trust me that this guy that's about to come up and get screamed at was by no means in the wrong. Other than that, he like gently placed his hand on this woman because he said, "Excuse me, I need to get up to the bar to grab something." And she turned and wheeled on him and flipped out, like started screaming, like, "Get your fucking hands off of me! Get your hands off of me!" And it looked, everybody in the bar wheeled and looked at this and you would assume, like, holy crap, this guy must have just grabbed her butt or something. But I saw the whole thing. And this guy, this friend of ours, is like one of the nicest guys in the world, would never have done that. I think in this day and age, this is 20 years ago. So in this day and age, you would also never think to ever touch any person ever on any part of their body before like actually making eye contact and asking permission. But he was very innocent for 1999. Okay. And so she started flipping out. And I was like, listen, don't flatter yourself. He wasn't hitting on you. So then she wheels on me. And she started making all these comments about like, why don't you leave and go see your steroid dealer, which is absurd. Because if I were to do steroids, I would have bought them off the internet. And she started making all these loud comments about my steroid dealer. And she had this tattoo on her bare arm. And I said, that's a nice tattoo. What's that? Chinese for cunt? And that's when I lost the support of the bartender, because she heard the C word. And that was it. I was thrown out. Me, our hero, was thrown out of the bar for defending a guy who was being accused of nothing at all. But I'll be careful with the careful with the Chinese characters. Wild Thing had asked, was Will Anderson an undersized pass rusher? Yeah, but I think he's a more complete player. Like I kind of liken him to, need one of our military people to weigh in on this. Like, what kind of a tank is he? He's like an extremely nimble tank who can fire like without the best firepower, but he can fire from all directions and he can move very quickly in all directions. And that's what makes him valuable, is his genuine versatility. That, he's not gonna, like, he's not a Von Miller. Von Miller just had a certain element of power to him to add to the speed that I don't think that right now, at least, Will Anderson has. And I think he's probably kind of tapped out in terms of getting a lot more physically impressive. Von Miller, he was kind of skinny his first year or two, and then he bulked up. He said he saw J.J. Watt partly as kind of inspiration for getting more strength. If Carter in the top 3 was his highest ceiling, how far do you think he could honestly fall, if at all? Yeah, I would go back to probably 5, 6, somewhere around there. I don't think the Texans are gonna be in play with him. Let's see. This video is awesome. I would love your opinion on Van Ness, Myles Murphy, and Nolan Smith. Okay, so I told you about Van Ness and I told you about Myles Murphy. In order, how would I like those guys? For this particular defense, I would like it. Oh, that's tough now. Okay. Yeah, for this particular defense, I like the upside of Nolan Smith, but I don't know how much of a fit he is for this defense. So I would go Myles Murphy, Van Ness, and then Nolan Smith. And I'm like, and I say this like I know exactly what DeMeco is going to do. DeMeco might have different plans and like a slightly different personnel than what he inherited in San Francisco. But I think that they would probably go with the upside of the pure pass rush of Van Ness. But man, Nolan Smith's just so athletic. I got to do a deep dive on Nolan Smith still. Let's see. I think all realistic at 12. I love Van Ness, uses his hands real well, just empowered, just raw. Yeah, like I don't. And the other thing I would say too is when I watch any of these guys that are supposed to go in the first round, you start to pick out, as somebody that doesn't do it full time like a scout, the weaknesses are so glaring to me that it's hard for me to envision these guys and think like, oh, well, all he has to do is fix this or fix that. I view them, when I watch offensive linemen especially, all I can think is, oh my God, he's going to get destroyed his first week of training camp if he plays that way. And you just never know. Some guys figure it out like that. Like some offensive linemen come in and maybe they get worked a little bit their first couple days of camp, and then all of a sudden everything just clicks for them. Other guys, it takes longer, but then some guys just never get it and they keep doing all the bad habits. Let's see. Oh, yes. And Megan says, hit the like button. Yes. Everybody hit the like button, please. Let's see. All right. That's going to be it. I'm going to go get ready for the Astros game. So I've got a few household chores. And please subscribe, share, hit the like button, all those good things. And I'll see you guys later next week after I do a little bit of a deeper dive into, let's see, what should I do next? Oh, the tight ends. The tight ends. Definitely got to do the tight ends. I would not mind reaching on a tight end if we were so forced to do. Thanks, everybody.